Welcome back to the map. And today we are going to discuss prison reform with the mentally ill and the mentally ill. And our guest today is on the front lines of the topic and is someone who can speak directly to the issue. But before we dive into this controversial topic, we got to meet the team. My name is Andy Bernstein, your moderator, and with me are my wonderful co-host, the great Willie Drinkwater, addiction specialist, along with Kristen Perry Long. I'm going to let both of these fine people tell us who you are. So, Willie?
Well, I was going to say equal rights, but ladies first. Chris, what's up? Equal rights, but ladies first.
Political, okay?
Okay.
None. No
None.
political.
Oh, no.
No. So my name is Chris Long. I am a recovery coach and advocate, and I work for Aware Recovery Care, which is an in-home addiction treatment program. We meet clients where they're at.
And you've been on the front lines both on a personal and professional level.
Correct.
Okay. And you're currently in Florida.
Currently in Florida, taking care of my 90-year-old father and my 86-year-old mother.
But you're stationary, which is always good.
Yep.
Right now. And then Willie?
Right where I'm supposed to be.
There you go. William?
Willie Drinkwater. I've been in the field of mental health and addiction for 32 years. I did inpatient psych addiction locked door for 15 out of the 32 years. I'm an educator for UMass Boston in the addiction counselor education program. And I also have a private practice that is supposed to be in Beverly, but it's been out of my house now since probably April of last year. So,
COVID-19 relocation.
Yeah.
As for me, I'm Andy Bernstein. I've been in media for over 25 years, developing numerous cause marketing campaigns to help communities. I've created a number of campaigns to help address problems facing our country. So that's who I am. That's who they are. How was your holiday, guys?
Mine was quiet. I spent it with all my holidays since Thanksgiving with my mom and my dad. So it's quiet. No kids. It's really weird to go from 5 kids at Christmas to 2 older people.
Yeah.
Right?
It's got to be drastic.
It is.
Drastic
It's
change.
good. Like I said, I'm right where I'm supposed to be and making memories, and this is temporary and it's hard, but this is a different kind of mental health. Like this is.
It's beautiful, though. It's beautiful what you're doing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It is.
Hard, though.
It is.
Part
It's
of the
tough
life
stuff,
process.
It's tough. It's
Yeah.
tough stuff. Been there, done that. So I know.
What's your New Year's resolution, Chris?
So my New Year's resolution is one of them is to get back on my eating healthy diet type of thing, as well as really focusing on meditation, believe it or not, because I think if I'm good inside, then I'm good outside. So I'm keeping it really simple. And then my other one is I started a challenge. It's called the Reach Out Challenge. Do you want me to dive into why I started that challenge?
Sure.
Okay. So between Christmas and Thanksgiving, I have a young man that I've been working with for over a year. And he was out on the streets again. And his run this time was very different than any run that he had done before. He basically was housed up at Mass Ave. And it was kind of a very dark inside look as to what these kids and these adults, these people are going through. Talk about mental health and substance use. And he was on Mass Ave, living in a tent, not wanting help initially. And then when the time came that he wanted help, he didn't have the ability to make that instant phone call. He had to find somebody's phone. And he went to this tent that was set up by the state probably 2-3 years ago now, Willie, I think. I don't know.
About 3 years ago now.
Yeah, 3 years ago. And it was set up because I think it was set up with good intentions, but it is kind of shunned upon because of the location. It's tucked away in some area where it's not noticeable. And it was done that way because people were complaining, like the homeless population were sleeping in doorsteps and leaving messes in downtown businesses. They were sleeping on the commons. So they needed an area to put all these people, which used to be where the Long Island was, but now it's the streets. So they basically wanted to clean up the streets of all these homeless people that most of them suffered from mental health and substance use. So they created this tent. So I got a inside look via telephone from this inside tent. And there are people that work in this tent that provide assistance to people looking for services, but they're very limited and they're overwhelmed. Um, Based on what I heard, every time I talked to somebody in this tent, there were people yelling in the background, like fighting and yelling in the background. The person that I was talking to on the telephone was like, there's no smoking in the tent. You could hear people that were overdosing in the tent. You could hear them get the Narcan. You could hear all this stuff. And it was really upsetting to me because I'm talking to this person that works there, and you can just sense this person was going in 7 different directions, and there wasn't a whole lot of help, and there weren't a whole lot of resources, and they were very grateful for somebody being on the other end of the phone willing to find the DPH beds, find the insurance beds, set up the rides, do that work for them, help them out. Again, I think the intentions of the tent was not what it turned out to be, and what it has grown into. So my reach out challenge, it doesn't have to be to somebody who suffers from substance use or mental health. It's somebody who needs help, and the difference is it's not a reach out and pay it forward. It's a reach out and follow through. Like, walk that person from the time that you till they've gotten the help that they need.
Yeah.
And so it's just a challenge. There's no glory. It's just we all know somebody who was challenged, that especially because of COVID. Reach out, be that person, be the person on the other end of the phone, be that person that, maybe sits and has a cup of coffee and listens, and maybe you can help them in a way that you never knew that you could help them.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
Yeah, that's one of my New Year's resolutions.
Willie, real quick, what's yours? Thank you for sharing that, Chris.
My New Year's resolution is not to have a resolution, because I see where they go year after year. So I just don't do them.
On that note,
Well,
now that we've gotten that out of the way, we need to talk about a topic that is somewhat controversial, and it's the need for prison reform when it comes to the mentally ill, or as you said, Willie, challenged. And we're going to have our guest now join us, Amy Belger. Amy is an appellate attorney and post reform. I think I got it right. And she specializes in being an advocate for prison reform. So welcome to the show, Amy.
You're muted.
There we go.
there we go.
Thank you, Andrew.
Welcome. It's a pleasure. We're excited to talk to you about prison reform, and wanted to learn more about who you are and the great work you're doing and the importance of prison reform and how it is something that I think people probably need to learn more about. So tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I've been working in the criminal justice system as a lawyer for almost 30 years now. I started my career at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And while I was there, I focused sort of on prosecuting violent crimes involving victims. I was in the sex crimes unit and the child abuse unit. And towards the end of my career there, I was handling cases where the victim of a homicide was under the age of 14, or the victim of the homicide occurred in the course of a violent sexual assault. So I gained the perspective, from the victim side of, what it's like to be victimized and how that can lead to a lot of mental distress, the trauma from that, the trauma for the surviving family members. And so, mental disorders and mental illness and challenges that come from that experience. Now, for the past 13 years, I've been a post-conviction practitioner, and I currently represent men who have been convicted of first-degree murder in Massachusetts.
Okay.
That's my exclusive practice focus. So my clients, they are serving life without the possibility of parole. A lesser part of my practice is I also represent juvenile homicide offenders who were convicted of first-degree murder, but are parole eligible because we no longer sentence juvenile first-degree murder offenders to life without. We give them a chance.
Okay. And so how did you become, and Willie and Chris, please feel free, please jump in, but how did you, what inspired you to become, a major advocate for this, as far as prison reform, which is kind of something you work closely with? How did that come about? Like, what made you decide to specialize in this particular area?
So in, getting to know my clients as people who are incarcerated and serving the sentences they're serving, I realized probably after 3 or 4 years of that specific focus that I had these long-term relationships with my clients that were relationships of trust. And in many situations, I'm the only human being that they speak to, that they feel safe speaking to about what they're going through, what their experience is like in their incarcerated setting. And I noticed that there's a lot of co-occurring struggles they're having. Addiction, trying to stay sober, maintain their sobriety, and mental illnesses of a number of varieties, most commonly PTSD. And I felt as though that was a skill set that I was lacking as a practitioner because I have a law degree.
Okay.
And all the other experience that I had gleaned in terms of being able to help them was just sort of anecdotal life experience and professional experience. So I went back to school. I got my addiction counselor license, and Willie that's how we met.
That's how we met.
Yeah, I took Willie's co-occurring disorders class, which
Okay.
did me a tremendous service. And so in order to look at, there needs to be reforms in our criminal justice system because those with mental illness are being harmed more than helped. They're not getting better, they're getting worse. And systemically, there's changes we can make, but being an advocate for reform comes from understanding that those in charge of the prison system are not going to, on their own, reform the system for the mentally ill. It needs to come from the outside. And, like you saw recently, the Department of Justice came in and did an audit of the Department of Corrections. And that was because it was pushed for, right?
Right.
Okay, so, and it gets pushed for because enough people report to the Special Litigation Department of the federal government that these abuses are going on in Massachusetts, right? And that's what kicks it off.
So, as doing research for you, for your appearance on our show, one of the things I've learned doing the show with Willie and Chris and other shows, I've started to learn, like, there's a lot of people out there be like, all right, you're prisoners, you committed a crime, you should be in jail, I'm not really worried about you, right? I'm playing devil's advocate with you.
You're done. You're in jail. That's it.
Right.
Especially if you're in jail for life. It's like, oh, well, you're not, people think that you don't deserve anything,
Right. And so in doing the research, what I've learned is that, if you break it down for people who don't care, here, there are statistics that say, you probably could speak to this more than I, but I learned a new word yesterday, recidivate. That that this actually, by not having prison reform, and we can talk more about what that means, but how does this affect our, the taxpayers and the community by not having prison reform?
Most of the incarcerated population are going to rejoin us in the community at some point. If they're coming from an incarcerated setting, right, a carceral setting, out into the world, and they are more dangerous and they are an increased public safety risk because they have unaddressed mental health problems that have been exacerbated during their incarceration. They are not only going back for more incarceration at the taxpayer's expense, they're probably going back because they're going to hurt somebody, right?
More serious crime.
Community on their way. Okay. And so simply because we put them in a cage and leave them there to protect all of us from, the harm they caused, or to teach them a lesson, or to punish them, all of those goals are lofty goals. They're certainly legitimate goals. But when we don't address the type of person we're going to have rejoin us by looking at what it is they're struggling with as a person that led to some of this stuff, you're not only going to have recidivism, which is, repeat offending in the community, it's probably going to be worse than what put them there in the first place. And so we should look at incentivizing our leaders in government and working on public education of these issues for the benefit of all of us. So we're not going to save any money on that end by failing to treat, and address mental illness in the incarcerated population.
But I think, go ahead, Willie.
No, Chris, for you first.
But I think as a country, we choose to not acknowledge mental health. I mean, I think, what I have noticed over my years of working in this field is that the quick fix on to the next is just a pill. Here's a pill. This pill will fix this problem. This pill will fix this problem. And you have kids that are on a garbage can full of pills to address the problem, but it's not addressing the problem. It's not working on the problem. Like what Willie does is like he dives into it. Okay, so yes, you might need some type of medicine. It's just like MAT. MAT is not the solution. It is a tool.
Medication assisted treatment.
Right. Maybe you need, a pill to help you so that you can work on the problem. But instead we stuff pills into them and we push them.
Yeah. If I can interject, I'll get somebody that comes in to see me for the first time and we're doing the assessment, and, and they're saying that they, that they've been feeling depressed and this and that, and they think they may need to go on medication. And then we get into it and it's like, well, what's been going on in your life? Well, I'm in a crappy job that I can't stand, and my relationship with my wife is going down the tubes. And it's like, so you think the medication is going to be the answer? But basically it's a situational depression. So maybe if we work on, the employment factor and the relationship with your wife, maybe you wouldn't need the medication, but again, it's American society. Give me a pill, fix me now. If not today, yesterday, I want the quick fix. And just to get back with the, nationally, as far as in incarceration goes, Amy, do you see a big difference in states whether they're viewing it as the penal system or correctional system? The language that we use a lot of times can affect the way we go forward, doesn't it?
I think that's probably true, but we've called it the Department of Correction for years. I think my whole life.
So what are we correcting if we're not?
What are we correcting?
I don't see that. if you read the DOJ report, you're not going to see it either.
Mm.
But to be fair, it's important not to throw too wide a net, cast too wide a net, right?
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
there are people within the Department of Correction that sort of view this issue aligned with what we're talking about.
Right.
The problem is they at this present time they lack the authority to insist upon
To make the changes.
yeah, exactly. Right. So
But there are people within the system that are of our mindset.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
well, how do you determine? Okay, so if you're in prison and you've committed a violent crime, how do you determine whether that person is has mental illness? But like, what's the determination between the two?
Sometimes they come in carrying a diagnosis, right? They already, their medical records and their medical history will follow them. They'll come in with prescriptions already prescribed from some diagnosis, right? They also get evaluated when they're in the Department of Correction, either in response to something they've done, some conduct they've engaged in the prison, or just it'll be picked up through a screening, like a health screening that they have.
Yeah, Amy, who makes the determination to bring somebody in to do an evaluation? I mean, how does that work?
They can be referred by staff for an evaluation.
Okay.
It can be in response to an incident that it's mandatory.
Okay.
If they're in general population and something happens, they slit some guy's throat, or they just do something weird. If there's, an inappropriate exposure, they're exposing themselves. If they're, crying or weeping inappropriately, inappropriate affect, I guess is the way I would put that, right?
Okay.
That would be a way. Their family can write to the superintendent and say, I've seen these dramatic changes in my loved one, and, I'm concerned, right? So, yeah, there's a number of paths that can get them there.
Okay.
Are the correctional officers trained to understand who is suffering with mental illness? Do they adjust their behavior accordingly, or do they continue to treat everybody the same way? And is that part of prison reform?
I think that's really an interesting topic, because whenever I look at these prison reform, Bill's like, we need more training for the corrections officer. We need more training. I really don't think we need anything more than like the very basic stuff. What we need is integration of mental health professionals as part of the staff. Okay. Because if somebody is not receptive to the information and doing the job they were hired to do, that they anticipated to do, a different way, you can train them all they want, and it's not going to make any difference. But if you have somebody who professionally decided, I want to go into this field and address mental health issues of incarcerated people, that's a person who's differently motivated, okay, to be an actor, right? So I'm not like a huge fan of, all we have to do to the correction staff is give them more training. I am a huge fan of, let's have less people doing the enforcement, right?
Right.
Let's have what we need to keep the place secure, but let's have more people addressing things that believe in, right?
A humanistic approach.
Those needs being met. And that's not to say that corrections officers who are on the enforcement side are inhuman. That's not what they signed on for professionally.
Exactly.
It's like, okay. Right. It's like, I get very triggered, Willie, by, the defund the police, because the messaging on that is wrong. And, we've done a grave disservice to a concept that needs some attention. The better way to say that is unburden the police. Okay. We are asking the police to do things they do not want to do. They did not sign up for.
It's not in their scope. Yeah.
No,
they're ill-equipped.
right. So here's the thing, right? So all of these shootings that have been happening, that police have been doing, right? When there's a hostage situation, what do they get in? They get a negotiator in, right? Well, why, when the family's saying he suffers from mental health, why are we going in, shooting, and then asking questions? Why not, if the family has identified their loved one as having a mental break, and yeah, they're running around, but they're not running around shooting up everybody. They're running around. They might have a weapon. They might look dangerous. Why aren't we getting somebody in there professionally to be with the police? Because that's not their job to diagnose. Their job is to protect. I'm not a therapist. Like I would never say that I'm a therapist. I go to my boundaries. I do my job. Like, why are we having such a hard time allowing everybody to do their job instead of saying, well, you have to deal with this and you have to deal with that. And you have, no, you do your job. We get the professionals that do their job. If we all did our own job, we would unburden a lot of people. Instead, everybody's having to wear all these different hats. And a lot of the hats they're not even trained in.
No, it's packaging. It's packaging if it's presented the right way, not defund the police, but have more assistance, that it's more complicated than just having the incarceration. There's more to this.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that went through my mind last week, there was the shooting in Boston where they killed the guy with mental health issues. It was above a candy store or something. And I was thinking, they were aware that he had mental health issues. And I was thinking in terms of why didn't they go in with a beanbag gun and taser?
Because that's
as a first option. Yeah,
I would shoot to kill. That's what I don't understand. Like, I get it. They have to protect, and I get it. Sometimes people are really, really disconnected mentally, but if it's visible and it has been verbalized, why do we have to shoot to kill? Why? I don't understand. And then you put them in prison because of their behaviors, and we don't address their behaviors. We don't dive into it. It's like telling somebody, it's like telling an addict, okay? If you don't get to the core of the problem as to why you use, you're just going to keep using. I can lock somebody in a rubber room for 6 months, right? They won't have any drugs in their system, but they're going to go out and they're going to have something happen that's going to give them the permission to use.
Trigger.
That problem has not been addressed.
Because of an unresolved issue.
Yeah. Right.
That's a great segue. No, that's a great segue because, not to cut you off, but I'm going to cut you off. My question to you, Amy, is that we talked about the DOJ report. We talked about, with the Mass Department of Corrections. Now, I was reading an article that was from NBC News. I'm going to be like Chuck Todd right now on Meet the Press. I was reading an article right now on NBC News in December of 2019 that they were saying Massachusetts has developed a blueprint for criminal justice. And I'm reading this, but yet I'm reading the DOJ report. So what's the difference, how do you see this? And we talk about prison reform and criminal justice. Can you speak to what we're talking about when we talk about prison reform? And is there a disconnect between organizations or government?
I think so, because, it is true that they came up with a blueprint, but it's like an architect drawing up plans, right? For you to build your house. Okay. The blueprint, you can't live in it. Right. So It's a start. Okay.
And if you don't have don't have a skilled construction crew.
Exactly. If you're not going to hire the people to enter, you know what I mean? Like, so no, it looks good. I didn't disagree with much of anything in it. I'm waiting to see what it looks like. Right. Because I certainly don't see it. So, that was December 2019.
Right.
And in January 2020, Sousa Baranowski, the maximum security prison in Massachusetts, there was an enormous uprising where, the staff, abused and locked in cells and had, sick dogs on prisoners and, had them, bitten and they're, beating them up and, they had to evacuate, entire units there. And it was widespread abuse in reaction to an incident that guards had in one unit a couple of days before. And we've been fighting, right, with the DOC. Here it is, January 2021, for over a year, right, to get the videotape footage from that prison and the documents of what happened. Still, they are not forthcoming, which is a nice way of saying lying, to the judge that the litigation is in front of about what exactly went on and, what they've done to compensate, the prisoners that were harmed from that. They have represented that they've given them back all their legal documents that they took away from them. But I know firsthand that's not true because, some of them are my clients. And so, then we have to go back to the judge and, we have to say, they did not under oath tell you the truth about this. And we have to hope that there's some kind of consequence for that, So, you can have a blueprint for criminal justice reform that, got enough votes to get passed in the legislature.
Right.
But if you're not going to insist that it be implemented, it's like the blueprint that sits on the table, that
It's just a future plan.
yeah.
So no, thank you for clarifying that, because as I was reading, I was like, it seems like there's two different things, and like you said, it's a year later or 2 years later. So, we talk about prison, talking about prison reform. Can you share, because we're given the broad topic, but can you give some specific examples of what needs to be done from a micro level?
I can give you sort of minimum things that need to be done right now. And it comes, of course, from the information that's documented in the DOJ report. I didn't even know till I read the DOJ report that there's some kind of standard where prisoners are not supposed to be held in solitary confinement on mental health watch for more than 4 days. I didn't even know that because I've never heard of somebody being held for, that short amount of time. I've had clients held for a year and a half, there. They have instruments of self-harm available to them on mental health watch, which to me, obviously, right, that's just counterintuitive. And how that happens, why that happens, we can certainly come up with a list of, what are all the possible reasons or, how that can happen. But it has to be something that's within the control of the administration to stop. Right. Okay. So, solitary confinement should not be used as a punitive measure for other than, something that's going to forward the goals of correction, if you will, of behavior. Somebody who's suffering from severe PTSD that was in the general population and something happened, right? An incident occurred and it isn't attributable to intentional malice, right? It isn't attributable. It is directly attributable to a psychiatric issue that needs to be addressed. Putting them into a cell for 90 days, 180 days is not going to do anything to address.
Yeah. Amy, I don't know, Amy, if you know Dr. Stuart Grassian. Dr. Stuart Grassian's a Harvard psychiatrist, and he's a lawyer and he's a CPA. I mean, the guy is off the charts, but but he years ago represented all of the inmates being held in supermaxes across the United States, saying if they have a mental health issue and you're putting them in supermax, all you're going to do is exacerbate the mental health issue that they have.
Yeah, it's true. And I have found I have clients with we call it SMI, severe mental illness in the prison system, who have spent long periods of time in solitary confinement on mental health watch. And like, to give you one example that I can give you of the problem, one of my clients who was part of the incident that happened at Sousa last January, he got transferred. That's a maximum security, classification facility. They had to depopulate Sousa, right, at that time. He was transferred to a minimum prison in the state. And he was put into a cell with a stranger roommate. And he was calling me several times a day saying, Amy, this is not safe. I could hurt this guy. I could really hurt this guy. I don't have my medication. This makes me very nervous. I don't feel safe. I don't think the cellmate's safe. I've been telling everybody here, and I've been documenting it. And so I wrote a letter I pulled his medical records, right, from that I had out of my file. I wrote to the superintendent and she said, you're on notice. Okay. If anything happens to his cellmate, right, or him in there,
you're forewarned.
You were forewarned.
Right.
And so that solves that problem. But why do we need to do that way? That's like a no-brainer, is it not? If you work in this field, but like, it's not that no one knew that, okay? It's that you needed that level of kind of
attention,
communication.
Right.
Communication.
Okay,
yeah.
so that's a problem. That's really a problem because that's really basic stuff, right? If you're an administrative leader of an institution like that, isn't it?
Yeah, but is he? Yeah, but I mean, like people view the world based on their own field of vision. Yeah. Schopenhauer. So if you have an administrator, they may be from their field of vision, they'd be saying, "Oh, is this someone trying to be manipulative, or just not paying attention,
Or somebody who just doesn't come from the background that is needed to address that." So what you say is the superintendent of a prison is a professional that's risen up through the ranks of corrections officer, through captain and deputy. They never got any sort of training in terms of those issues, or they did get training, but that's not their field. It's just not their field. So why don't you have the deputy, why don't you have, a superintendent of mental health, right, administration, whose call that becomes, right?
Hold on. Mom next.
Go.
Write it down so you don't forget it.
I won't.
So I think so the progress of substance use and mental health, right, it has progressed. It has gotten worse. And I think, obviously, that when somebody is incarcerated, for mental health, I think more times than not, obviously their problem has not been addressed. And that's a huge contributing factor to why they are incarcerated. But if they haven't been able to communicate out of jail, what makes them where's the help to make them communicate while they're in jail? Because there's nobody communicating with them until they do something to raise that attention, until Yeah,
and if you communicated in jail, is that showing a weakness?
Exactly. I mean, it's like a stigmatism almost. They're stigmatized because they have mental health, and they weren't able to address it outside of jail. They go to jail, and now they're getting thrown in, the hole for their behaviors. But it's like, I think what has to happen, is there needs to be a bigger staff on these prisons, Well,
there has to be a mental health addiction staff person, somebody. And Budsman. Budsman.
Yeah.
Budsman.
W- when you work with someone, one of your clients, like as a layman, I mean, what do you try to accomplish? Because you work with them after they've been
Convict.
sentenced.
Yeah.
So what are those things that you try to advocate for, or to ask the judge for?
So, as an appellate attorney, I handle the direct appeal of their conviction, and that's how we meet. That's how I get to know them, right? And I raise any issues resulting from their conviction that need to be brought before an appellate court, right?
Okay.
However, my client relationships are for first degree murder because the sentence is life without the possibility of parole. I am very thorough and meticulous in looking at their case in terms of issues for appeal. So my relationships with my clients generally go on from anywhere from 3 to 10 years.
Oh wow.
So I'm in this, I have what I found, which led me, to go get more education about addiction and mental illnesses. um, I try to form a trusting relationship with them all, not just because I want them to feel like they can trust their lawyer, but because they don't have a trust relationship with another human being
Yeah.
in the situation that they are in. And so what I try to do is I think this is something I want to do for my clients because we spend hundreds of hours one on one over the course of all these years. And why don't I want to be as much help to that person as I can be?
Looking
And
at the whole picture.
yeah, the whole picture. And so what I try to do is advocate for them on as many levels as I can advocate for them as their lawyer and their advocate. And one of the things that I can do and try to help with is to improve their quality of life such that it is in the setting that they're in.
Are you
Do
a
you get a
non?
lot
Do
of
you have a?
pushback?
Go
Oh, sorry.
ahead.
Do you get a lot of pushback?
No, I really don't because I worked on the law enforcement side for a long time and I understand all of that. And I try to approach whoever I'm trying to approach, with some empathy towards, what it's like to be in that role, to perform that role, and try to sort of say, I start with, I appreciate what you do and what you contribute in your capacity, right? I need to reach out to you in my capacity for this reason, because this is the role I play, right? And I'm not saying I don't get any pushback, but what I'm saying is I think that um, if people across the system are approached in a way that they feel like they're understood by you before you start with what it is you want them to do that they don't want to
You're
do.
validating their feelings and
Yeah,
their
yeah,
thinking.
yeah.
As a, do you fall like? Are you set up as a nonprofit? I mean, if you have a relationship with a client for like 10 years, between 3 and 10 years, like, is it through the public defender's office? I'm just curious of how you are able to, if somebody, doesn't have the funding, how can they work with you?
So I have a private law practice and I accept appointment from the state to handle first degree murder appeals for those who are convicted because even people who are charged and tried for first degree murder, even if they are well resourced people, they have money, even the wealthy, they spend all their money on the trial, right? And
Okay.
by the time they're tried, they haven't worked in 3 or 4 years normally, right?
Right.
All the money that they have goes into the trial. So by the time they're convicted of first degree murder, almost every um, first-degree murder appeal is court appointed.
What is
Right.
the definition of first degree murder?
That's interesting.
Yeah,
It's-
so first-degree murder is either a murder that was committed with deliberate premeditation, right? It wasn't something that happened subtle, like there was thought
Wasn't a barroom brawl.
and a decision was made. Or it's a murder that was convicted with what the law defines here as extreme atrocity and cruelty. The problem I often see with that, the second, is you bring lay jurors in, you sit them in a jury box, ordinary, everyday, average members of the public. Almost any murder sounds extremely cruel and atrocious to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost everyone does, right? And so I think there's an overcharging and a higher rate of conviction for that crime than is actually warranted for a penalty that is life without the possibility of parole. You're going to die in prison. So a lot of what I do as a post-conviction lawyer, right, on first-degree murder, that's all I do is first-degree murder, is trying to get them out from under the first. Okay.
Okay.
It's not that you didn't do it. Okay. It's not that this didn't happen, but it doesn't rise to the level of extreme atrocity and cruelty when we look at the landscape of, the conduct that leads to death. Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
You could write a book.
Go ahead, Chris.
You could write a book.
I know, it's great. It's so fascinating. It really is fascinating. Now, another question I had for you, and I don't know if you can speak to this. There was Aaron Hernandez, right? And I don't know if you've probably been asked the question before, but in that scenario, what could have been handled differently with him? Is there anything that could have been done? Was there any, lack of attention that we kind of talked about earlier? Like, in your opinion, how could it have been handled differently?
From what it sounds like, he was struggling, right, with some mental health issues, right? Assuming that's true, I don't know if it is because he wasn't my client. You keep an eye on somebody like that. You try to reach out for them and see if they can get any relief, right, from what they're experiencing by any services that are available, right, through the system. You certainly don't leave him in a position where what he accomplished can be accomplished, right? Hanging from his bed sheet from the window and all of these things. There isn't any reason why there can't be cameras and monitors and things so that doesn't happen in 2 minutes, right?
Right.
There isn't any reason why there aren't sort of rounds being made, right?
Right.
It seems as though at a minimum, it's a situation of neglect. Anytime one of the prisoners hangs themselves, I don't see how you don't reach the conclusion that there was some administrative neglect, right?
Right.
Is there a high rate of suicide in jails? Like, they never really talk about it unless there's somebody that has a high profile. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I think it's an unacceptably high rate in the sense that when you think about what the environment is, we shouldn't be leaving people that live in those conditions, even if we think are mentally stable, unmonitored, because it is a forced situation, right? Where they've been removed from their community and they've been put into an environment of negativity and deprivation. And I think that even people who have no history of mental illness or struggle can quickly develop that. And they experience things like the loss of the deaths of their children and the deaths of their parents and siblings and friends and spouses on the outside that you don't necessarily know that, right? They can be going through any sort of thing that'll, impact them in a very different way from a person who's not incarcerated. So I think there should always be a vigilance surrounding the fact that it's an environment that gives a susceptibility to suicide. Yeah.
A quick question for you, Amy. With the position that you're in and everything else, how important is self-care to you? I mean, is it something you really need to break away? And what do you do for?
It's interesting, Willie, because at the beginning of the pandemic, one of my good friends from law school reached out to me. He's a dean of a law school in a different state, and he said, what you're trying to do to get your prisons, I see this. You're trying to get your clients out of the prisons because of the COVID, right? And it was extremely stressful, and I was working, very long out. I was only sleeping like 3 or 4 hours, for like months on it in the spring, trying to get them out. And he said, I need you to come learn some meditation. I need you to learn, how to disconnect from your work. I don't think you're doing it, and I don't think that this is gonna be sustainable for you. Yeah. And so he kind of took me into this program of, mindfulness meditation and, recognizing when I was going to benefit from 15 minutes away, with that. And it's been really good for me. I hadn't had any prior exposure to anything like that. The other thing is I've enjoyed over the pandemic that a lot of people have done is just for lack of access to a lot of things, just going out for a walk and sort of paying attention to nature again has really been it's been good for me, and it's been revitalizing. And
well, the Buddhists refer to that as kinhin. It's walking meditation.
I love it. And it's getting maybe back to some basics from when you were a kid. Yeah. Right. And I appreciate the 4 seasons even, right, as we're going through this with those kind of walks. So yeah.
So where can people learn more, and how can we get involved? How can NAMI get involved?
I think if you see, legislative initiatives, right, towards things, I think that certainly money talks in the society we live in, donate to groups and causes like NAMI. That are forwarding the interests of those who need this kind of help, right? Certainly pay attention, know who your state reps are, right? And your everybody that represents you in government at all levels, even federal too. Yeah, know who they are.
A side note there in Massachusetts, you can go to Find My Legislator online.
That's right.
Just pop in your address, it'll give you the information.
Stay current, because this is a field, mental health treatment and addiction treatment that is evolving. It's ever changing. Stay very current and read. There's plenty out there, and educate yourself. Watch documentaries that are high quality on these issues. I think all of those are good things.
Yeah.
Not that one of the prison. I think it's in California, and it's like 8 floors.
Yeah.
I don't know the name of that one. Do you know that one, Willie?
No,
it's on
not off the top of my head.
Yeah, no. It's very interesting, but it's like it's a circular prison, and they're all different floors. And like the 8th floor, they'll all flood their toilets, and it'll go down, like crazy stuff like that. Like it's interesting. I think it's it's one of the incarceration shows.
Is it true, like lockup, or is it a lot of what we see in TV? Can you do you see? I guess this is my last question: is do you see? Are they totally inaccurate, or is there some accuracy to the portrayal of
depends on the show, right?
Right, but is it as bad as it looks? Of course it's bad, but is it specifically with the guards and the way they operate? Is it a little not as nasty as it appears on TV?
If it's authentic footage, right, of something, it obviously is what it is. If it's a dramatization, I think, that's open to some question. Some of the documentaries that are not like footage of what actually happened in real time, some of the documentaries where people go in the prison and interview people, this that, I think that can actually appear that it's better than it actually is, because everybody's on their best behavior for the film crew, right? Okay. So, and there's notice given, and you can't just show up, right, with the film crew and go in without notice. But in the instances where they actually get footage out that they never anticipated anyone was ever going to see, that's reliable. And that's what the DOJ did, right, with a lot of the report. They explained that the prisoner who had cut himself and blood was pooling outside, the cell that he was in, coming
Yep.
out, and he bled to death in there. And there's all these guys, there's personnel that are not seeing that as anything urgent. Okay, you're not going to see that if you go in with a film crew.
Sure.
Right.
Okay,
It's going to be sanitized.
and even if that doesn't happen every day, and even if that never happened on any other occasion, the fact that that happened on this occasion, and there's no question that it happened, should be all you need to know, right?
Gotcha. Guys, do you have any other questions for Amy?
No, this is like, we need to have a show 2 to go on.
I know. Will you come back?
Oh, I would love to come back.
Okay.
Cool.
We didn't scare you away?
No.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. That's our show for the week. Chris, take us out.
Thank you and welcome back. Happy New Year. I look forward to kind of getting back on the saddle here and bringing, you all information. If you have any questions or requests for shows, ideas, just hit us up.
And nonprofits. We want to hear from nonprofits too, because we want to start integrating nonprofits and helping nonprofits with more exposure and, even on a fundraising level, we have some ideas. So please reach out to us as well.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you. Thanks to Mike Weber, back at Mission Control. Foxboro.
Amy, thank you for coming on. I'll
Thanks,
give you a
Amy.
call over the weekend.
Nice to see you.
All right.
Thank
That
you.
You guys.
is the map for this week. We'll see you next time.